Good evening. Welcome to all of you. This is our Board of Selectmen's meeting, July 20th, 2017. And first on our agenda is Colonial Water Company. Mr. Vaughn, thank you very much for coming. Nick, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to have you. We have a contract with you that is due to be signed again, and I believe it has raised some questions from our Water Study Committee, and so we thought that this would be a good opportunity to have in a public forum an opportunity for questions to be asked and for you to have a chance to answer.
Sure, certainly.
Great. Would you like to start, or should we just start by asking for any questions?
I think we can start with the questions.
All right.
May I ask, were you supplied, we provided the Selectmen a 3-page document, which was a statement of what we understood the company was, a statement of where certain conditions about it, and some questions we had. So I'm hoping they gave it to you because I didn't want you to be blindsided.
Right, I believe we have.
Okay, good.
Jerry, maybe, if I may,
Sure.
Madam Chairman, maybe we could introduce the people on the Water Committee.
Absolutely, this is a great opportunity.
Yeah.
Right.
I'll do the honors, since
Thank you.
he's still flummoxed about this
Thank you very
conversion.
much.
This is Jerry Clark, member of the Board of Health, and he's chairman.
Chair of the board.
Yeah. You're chair of the Board of Health now, also?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness, okay, he's taking over. And I'm Justine Ingram, I'm the Open Space Committee, also on the Water Resource Study Committee. Tara Nolan over here is also on the Water Resource Study Committee. Kate, I believe you're still on the Water Committee? I am. Yes, in your capacity. And Greg Bahoon is also on the Water Study Resource Committee.
Thank you very much. Excellent. So would you like to pose any questions?
Well, I think that the basic question is what we had at the very end of the document, and that is, this has been going on now since 1994, and...
Explain what has been going on since 1994.
Well, for the audience,
Yes.
it probably should make clear to newcomers to Dover, at one time, Dover, the town, owned a water distribution system, and the water source were Dover town wells owned on Haven Street in the woods as you go down, or excuse me, Church Street. As you go down the street, you'll see woods there, and still a sign saying public water supply. At some point, there was a discharge of gasoline at the Noble gas station. Unfortunately, the storm drains took that discharge and dumped it into the watershed where the wells were, contaminating the wells with MTBE, which is a chemical which essentially can't be purged and put the wells out of business. And the resolution to finding a source of water for those homes around the center of town that were serviced by the Dover Water Department and the town buildings and what was then the Carroll School was to ask the Dover Water Company, owned by Ruth Fryer, to run a distribution pipe down Walpole Street and connect to the Dover Water Department at a point just about where Church Street intersects Springdale. And that's been the system of distribution since that time, with a contract that was executed on December 10th, 1994, envisioned at that time to perhaps be one which might be replaced if Dover were to find another water source, which clearly over the many years that has not happened. And therefore every 3 years thereafter, there's been this need to re-execute an extension. Granted that with each extension, the original termination fee that existed in the contract is reduced proportionally because as the time goes on, Dover's obligation for that termination fee declines. So it seems to us, the question is it really worth the effort only extending this for 3 years, given that there is a termination capability on either party's part with 12 months' notice, since we, at this time, do not foresee any replacement of the water source.
Mr. Vaughn?
May I call you Jerry?
By all means.
Jerry, frankly, I think that either the contract would be extended on a much larger, a longer termination point, or the relationship, as I see it, since we've been here with Colonial Water, is I'm not even aware of its existence. It's that seamless. So the only time I really think about the contract is about every 3 years. So, to your point, is it really effective? Off the cuff, I would say no. I don't think it is effective in terms of requiring the effort that goes into this.
I mean, in this particular case, as was the case 3 years ago, I think it was a date that wasn't even on the horizon for those parties who would have to execute the contract, and we had to bring it up and say, by the way, you do know that it's expired. Not that there was any expectation that you would say, we're taking our water and going home, but contractually, there was a need to continue. So I would proffer a 5 or a 7-year term.
Is the pricing structured, I haven't been there, is the pricing structured that it works for a 5-year term?
The pricing structure, actually, is an explicit pricing structure that has not really gone to the term. I gave you a copy, a link to the contract.
I did.
If you want, I can pull it. Are you familiar with the contract?
I am. I read it this afternoon just to update myself. There's 2 aspects of the depreciation. One has to do with a 2% depreciation over each year, and the other one is a $1,000 decrease in the amount. And I think was it $65,000 or something like that?
Originally,
I
back
meant actually the rates, is the rate structure, I have
the
no
water
idea.
rate structure.
And to your point, Kathy,
Tar.
beg your pardon, I'm
Doesn't
sorry,
matter.
Tara. The rate structure is identical to the existing Colonial Water Company customers. It's seamless.
So it doesn't matter.
As a matter of fact, within that contract, there's an item that has to do with capturing funds for the town for capital improvements. To my knowledge, that's never occurred. There's also the responsibility of the town to maintain the distribution system.
From the point of origin where the connection is out to the customers of the Dover Water Department.
That is correct. Essentially, it maintains the assets that were held by the town at one point in time. The infrastructure is old, and over time, it's going to need replacement, just like we plan on certain replacements within the colonial system. So if we revisit the contract, I would say, let's fix those things and make them practical. Make them such that they have meaning, but right now we're not exercising, nobody seems to be interested in that aspect. I even question whether the contract is needed. So these are things that I would throw, but I'm certainly willing to discuss.
I would agree with you that at this point it's a long-standing arrangement. It's essentially a retail purchase. It's all covered under the DTU rate tariff. So none of that's going to change. The liability for maintenance isn't on you other than where the intersection is. So
But maybe that should change. I mean, under a typical DPU rate structure, you pay for a service and they make it all show up. You're not responsible for.
But let's go back. The distribution within the Dover Water Department is in a system owned by the water commissioners who are the selectmen.
And it's a tiny little distribution
Yes.
system relative to all the piping
Right.
in the rest of the
I
town.
mean, if you have 610 or so customers, as I understand it, this is 4 or 5%. it's hard to measure because, of course,
Mhm.
the commercial buildings may be using more, may be using less water, I don't know.
Yeah, there would require a little bit of an analysis, but it could be done very quickly. I did look into that before it came. But again, to your point, the infrastructure that's owned by the town is a responsibility of the town to repair.
Mhm.
It's old infrastructure. It's all,
I would raise the consciousness of the board to recognize that, in fact, in the past year or so, there was a leak within the town water department's distribution system, which of course cost the town money because there was lost water. And that had to be repaired, and it took a while to identify.
Jerry, in your notes, you suggested that there be some type of system to measure, and the measure of that water supply should have been caught or either by us or by Colonial. What did you propose?
The onus really was on Colonial because there's no meter or metering on the gross volume that feeds into the Dover Water Department.
Actually, yes.
It all goes out to the individual meters. Is that not correct?
no, there is
There is a meter?
very definitely.
Okay.
And we were aware of that leak, and we advised
Carl Warner.
person, the operator, and it took you some time, and that happens. But again, to that point, if I just may go back, parenthetically, I'm going to say we measure the input and we measure the outputs, so that we can compare and we can tell if there's a leak, and we notify the operator that there is a leak, and we identify it, and most of the time there are no leaks. But, and I wasn't prepared to say this, and I don't know if the committee or the board would like to hear this, but I have often thought that we should just take over the town system, take the responsibility of the maintenance. Those mains are going to have to be replaced at a certain point in time, and we're retail billing all the customers right now. It's, as I said, you have to really look for the seams, and it's almost seamless as it presently stands, except that you have the responsibility of the operation and maintenance, plus the payroll that's associated with the operation.
Mr. Vaughn, I have a question for you. Are your customers, your home customers, are they also under contract with you? Or is it just the town?
Just the town, but the town's customers are under contract with us under a general obligation to responsibilities that we have via the Department of Public Utilities.
I see.
In other words, they have to adhere to certain rules and regulations, but that also applies to the town's customers. So it's almost a distinction without a difference.
I would mention, though, that going to the issue of lost water, your own document, and I quoted it, in fact, that you've seen a reduction from 16.5% lost water, 16.5% of the total water withdrawal, from 16.5% of that water being lost to 6.4%, a dramatic reduction, because after about 2 years, we finally did address the leakage that, as I understand it, was near the intersection of Walpole and Hartford Street.
Couple of things here, Jerry. First of all, the unaccounted for water, which we mentioned, which we measure on a rolling 12-month previous basis, indicated a leak in this present year, 2017. The leak on Walpole and Hartford Street, Hartford Ave, were identified last year and repaired last year. And it was not a 2-year duration. We discovered it and we became aware of it probably about, I'm going to say about 2 to 4 months before we repaired it, but we were trying to locate it. And it was a difficult repair. It was actually a gasket on a main that was newly installed. There had to be some settlement, maybe about a year down the road, and it separated a joint or made a joint bend. The gasket became dislodged, and that was the leak. But as far as unaccounted for water, you see it on our website. You cited some numbers there that indicated a 16% unaccounted for water loss, but we've reduced that, and we've had some leaks in the interior. There's been some leaks in in our own distribution system. Nothing to do with Hartford at the end or Walpole Street. So we get to those, but from year after year after year, we're consistently under, say, 8 to 10% unaccounted for water,
How
which
does
is a
that
great
fit
number.
into the industry norm? Because in the electric or gas industry, that would be giant.
I'm glad you asked that question. The industry owns 15%. If you exceed 15%, you're under certain orders from DPU and DEP. And we are very concerned and take pride in staying after the system. It's all about maintenance, it's all about system integrity, and, Alan Melanson, who has since retired, took great pride in it. As a matter of fact, Nick will attest to you that every system we have, we look at the unaccounted water each month, and we track it. And if there's a rise in the unaccounted for water, we bring it to the attention of the operator. What are we doing about it? When are you going to do some leak detection? Now, leak detection itself, I think you asked, what are we doing about controlling leaks? Annually, we have leak detection in the colonial water system, as well as for Plymouth, as well as for Valley. That's another system we have. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, I wanted to get that clear before the selectmen, what had transpired. Going to some of the very specific requests that we would have, you do supply, because it's in the contract that you're required to supply, the annual SWAP report. That's the report that deals with the quality of water, and that goes to the DEP. But what we don't have an obligation on your part to us, although it is an obligation to the regulators, is that you supply us the annual statistical report to the DEP and the DPU annual report. It would be both beneficial and very bluntly easier for us if you could provide those to us directly. I will tell you that we still get them, but I have to make contacts with folks in the state and ask favors to get the copies, which I get. But I'd rather not ask favors and just have you supply them.
Sure, and I totally understand that. I was under the presumption that you were getting those. If you're not, I'd be happy to.
Well, I do have in hand now the 2013 DPU report. That was actually disgorged under a Freedom of Information Act that Representative Denise Garlick forwarded to the DPU. But that's the only one I have on that. But on the DEP side, I recently acquired the 15 and 16 ASRs, and that answers a lot of questions.
I would like to jump in, if I may, and just hear from the selectmen. I know you had raised a question. I'd love to hear you.
So I have just a couple of questions. Colonial Water is as close to a Dover water system that we have in this town. And, and I believe at this point you service approximately 600 households, is that correct? Or is there more in the town of Dover?
610, I think. Is it
600 and
610, 620,
Okay,
so
approximation.
approximately.
As we all know, last summer we experienced a horrible drought, and we on the board got I was approached by several citizens concerned about Colonial's ability to continue to supply water in the event that, we continue to have those drought conditions. And I recognize that throughout the state we were in a drought that we're no longer in right now, but it got me thinking about, do you have some sort of a plan in place, because there are 620 households in Dover that are relying on Colonial Water to supply their water to them. So that was just one of the questions I had. And then I was also curious, I think it was 3 years ago we were here and we had a conversation, and there was a comment made about being at 60% capacity of the water that's available. So I was, excuse me, I have bad allergies today. So I was also wondering, I know that new households have come on board, so I was wondering where that number stood right now. And also I know from having a conversation with, I think it was the Springdale Water Trust, which I believe you have acquired or are in the process of acquiring, that they were technically responsible to provide water to, I think it was an additional 10 or 20 houses, and they were already pumping more water than their permit allowed. So this is a lot of questions all in one. So to summarize, I was wondering if you had a plan for drought conditions, where you are with respect to the supply of water that you have, and especially in light of if drought conditions continue.
Very good questions, and they're questions that we ask ourselves.
I'm sure you do.
Very vital, very important questions. It goes to your ability to provide service, adequate service, and so forth. And that's why we're here. That's why we run water systems. But relative to the first question, we measure the aquifer level
So
monthly.
How does one do that?
How
How does one do that? So is that just by going around to your various wells, and over time you've been looking at the groundwater level? Or?
That's an excellent question. Again, we have observation wells, and we measure the distance to the water table, and we do that consistently, uniformly, on a monthly basis. We do it more frequently, but we've seen some stability in the aquifer, the water table.
So just to interrupt, you've seen stability over what period of time?
Over the year, over years, but it's cyclical.
Okay.
So we measure, we gauge the water table on a monthly basis over a year. At the end of the year, it begins another cycle, and we've seen cycle after cycle after cycle, very comparable. There's no dramatic drop or even serious drop in the water table.
Even last summer, in light of the drought?
Even as of last summer. No.
Are those data public?
They are not. They're not. Those are internal documents.
Where are these monitoring wells?
Can we locate where the
No.
monitoring wells are?
You sure can. You can. I can arrange to have that done with our operator.
Sorry, Robin, thanks.
No, that's.
May I also ask, when this 60% of capacity discussion occurs, that's a rather amorphous term. 60% of your allowable water withdrawal, 60% of your perceived safe yield, 60% of what you think is the total aquifer capacity. What is it you're referring to?
It's typically 60% of our safe yield.
Of your safe yield?
Yes. But going on, let's see, we've hit the water table. The water table.
So that's interesting. One of the catalysts for this water committee was there's a lot of anecdotal evidence in town that citizens, when their wells fail, have to drill a lot deeper to get to water than they used to. And many, well, especially last summer, there were numerous shallow wells in town that I don't want to say failed. I was going to say dried up, but people couldn't shower and do laundry in the same day. So it's interesting to know that over the years, and I'm assuming Dover Water Company, your predecessor, was looking at the same data. Is that a correct assumption? So then you have data going back many years, looking at the water table.
We've been able to locate data probably back about 10 years.
All right, so that's
And,
significant.
some of the records maybe are there, we just have to dig for them. But what we found also is that surface supplies, were down significantly, as they usually are.
Over the summer?
over the summer, and typically, you'll see those levels really drop to their lowest point in September and October, and even into November of the year, and then they recover, and they're actually spilling over, in the early spring. It's very climate related, as you can understand.
Right.
Relative to Springdale, let me just give you an update. You probably know as much about Springdale as I do. We have
That's disappointing.
We sent them a asset purchase agreement, and that's been some time ago. It could be, I'm gonna guess, maybe 10 months or a year ago. And there's been no response, although we hear every once in a while that we're working on it. So that's the only thing I can report about Springdale. Now, do we have an interest in Springdale? Yes, we do. Where does Springdale stand with respect to the Water Management Act? They're probably close to the allowed withdrawal, or they may even be exceeding it.
Well, they said they were exceeding it.
They're exceeding it.
Jeffrey Carter, who was the longtime operator, and who, having moved out of town, created the situation where Springdale Farms Water Supply Trust now wants to offload on you. the
Desperately.
obligation. Openly stated in an open meeting that they were drawing more than they were allowable.
Probably, but that's not unusual with what's going on here, but it doesn't say anything about the capacity, the ability of the aquifer to support
No, I
that
understand.
withdrawal. When companies come in, when we came in to acquire the Dover Water Company, that was a turning point in its, shall we say, destiny. The Fryer family was ready to move on. There were certain improvements that obviously had to be made. We made those improvements. We do the same thing with Springdale. Springdale has issues, and we're prepared to roll up our sleeves and address those. Now, what's the benefit of us owning Springdale? Well, one of the benefits is that we're developing more economies of scale. We're going to mitigate costs, be carried over a larger customer base. And then there are other things for the Springdale residents that we can bring if we have to Colonial residents. There's many benefits.
Well, let me ask you this then.
Hey, Jerry, this is
Mary,
my
let
time
Robin
here.
speak.
So,
Let her finish.
Do you have another question?
I do.
Yes.
Imagine that, Jerry?
I have a lot of questions. So my question was what's near and dear to me was last summer. This was like the only town without any water restrictions, and the Commonwealth was certainly focused on the drought, and I know there were towns, I think Sharon was one of them, that landed up entering into a contract with the MWRA to procure 20% of their water. So I was just wondering, as a business owner, do you have I would call this almost a disaster recovery plan. Do you have something in place if there were to be continued, and hopefully not, years of drought and the water table does decline? Do you have an alternative source for water for the 620 houses that you service in Dover?
Let me go back to, do we have a plan?
Right.
And the plan would be, and we monitor operations daily. We're doing rounds daily. So we can tell, what the levels are, what pressures are, and so forth. If we were entering into a situation where supplies were depleting, we would issue much more severe restrictions. As a matter of fact, you can think about the most severe restriction, which would be only water consumption for domestic use. That's it. No irrigation, under significant penalties enforced by, we'll find out who's going to enforce that. But, that's a major significant step. But that would be where we would go to virtually, in real short order. Beyond that, we could service all our customers quite adequately. So we'd be okay in that respect. Now, an emergency supply, we could conceivably get water from Medway, in a neighboring town. There's that possibility, and I think that would be adequate. We've had discussions with them over the past, not ongoing, but over the past 4 or 5 years. And although we've never entered into an agreement, nobody likes to think of the worst, by the way. When push comes to shove, so to speak, some good things happen. But I am confident that we could, serve all our colonial and town customers adequately.
I appreciate that.
Mr. Jeffries, do you have anything you'd like to add before we let Mr. Clark ask one more?
Thank you, Madam
I think
Chairman.
one
So-
more.
Thank you. I'll try to bring 2 questions to one to make it a little bit easier.
I did 3 in one.
Oh. Overachiever.
I know.
Since kindergarten, she's been an overachiever. So surface supplies fluctuate and, in your words, can often exceed allowable withdrawals. And so my question would be, in light of that, have you ever been close to or above the safe yield levels? Because that's one of the things that Jerry mentioned to us in his, I think it was number 62 of his 106 bullet points that he gave us. Is that right, Jerry?
Yeah, we can
that's
talk
yes.
about this.
No, we can't.
No,
No, we can't.
No,
No, we
because I'd
can't.
like to get an answer.
No, yes.
Let him get him an answer.
I'd like to get an answer.
Yeah, okay.
Has the company been in excess of its allowable withdrawal?
There have been points in time when we have been in excess. However, that withdrawal limit is being reconsidered, as well as many of the permits in the Charles River and the Buzzards Bay, basically in eastern Massachusetts.
Thank you. So that is essentially that target fluctuate. The guideline, if you will, can change. Is that essentially what you're saying?
The guideline.
The guideline of the safe yield limit or the safe yield, because I think that might have been bullet point 74 on Jerry's 103 bullet points.
I think there are 2 different things: the safe yield limit and the allowed limit. 2 different things. We have exceeded on occasion the allowed limit, but on average, over 365 days, we have been right around the allowed limit. Now, the safe yield, we have room to go. Exactly how much, I do not know at this point in time, but I know there's extra capacity.
Has anybody ever exceeded that? And what has, if they have, what were the ramifications of exceeding it?
In the state or here in Dover?
Under your umbrella, just under your umbrella.
We have exceeded it on occasion in other operating systems. There have been really no consequences from an environmental or an agency point of view, because there's always circumstances, extenuating circumstances. Regulators try to work with us, and we try to work with them. So there are instances where we do exceed. The allowed limit, by the way, is a considered limit that is subject to give and take, thousands of gallons. I'm not sure exactly how it's obtained. It could be around the table with 4 or 5 people saying, that's it, that's what it's going to be. I'm not sure. But I think there's some flexibility in that. And there obviously has to be, because I think you'd see many more violations occur in the Bay State, in the Commonwealth, from DEP. And I don't think I've seen many, if any.
That segues exactly to my final question is, how do you compare relative to everybody else in that regard?
Very similar. We're close. I do think that the DEP is, and I know they're reconsidering the guidelines and the limits and so forth. As an example, I think everybody knows that there's a per gallon per capita target level of 65 gallons per day throughout the entire state. Is that realistic? But that's the target. I mean, does that apply not only to people in, say, Dorchester, as well as out in Long Meadow, Massachusetts, I don't know where they are on this.
Well, I think for us and for the board, we just want to be mindful of where you are relative to everybody else that you service, relative to our needs and relative to what we should be prepared for. And that's, I think what Jerry's committee has done, in my view, is prepared us in that frame to address the questions as it pertains to what we're about to, the contract and its extension and the ramifications of the extension. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clark?
I have only one remaining question. It is that page that you have that deals with conservation. And as it was alluded to last year, the DEP, although it was late in the year making a final determination that the state as a whole was in drought, nevertheless, early on, they had advisories, and all of the adjoining towns introduced conservation measures, restrictions on outdoor water use and such. As I remember it, the only thing that Colonial did was an imprimatur on their website and an imprimatur on their bills. But what concerns me is saying to not water between 7 and 9 a.m. in the morning, as I remember what was...
5 and 9.
Or 5 to 9, I'm sorry. 5 to 9 in the morning. But what really concerns me is that I would hope that you would be in a position where you would feel obligated to introduce conservation measures so that your overall water usage would decline from where it was when the Friars were running the company. And I'm curious what conservation measures you have in place, that you had in place last year, that you have in place now, going forward. And I gave you a list of what some of the adjoining towns are doing for conservation. So I mean, it's curious to me, you made a comment that who would enforce it. I'm sure you're aware the town has no legal authority to enforce the provisions of conservation that a regulated company, commercial regulated company operates. Really, the burden is on you. We have no enforcement capability. So I'm curious about that and how you would handle this.
Well, it's a difficult responsibility to enforce. Remember, we have a water operator here, and we can get a misuse of water or an abuse of water, I should say, in any place at any time. So it's very difficult to detect. I mean, you have automatic underground sprinklers that could go on at 4 a.m. and shut off at 7 a.m. So that is very difficult to monitor. Then the enforcing action that might be taken might be a fine. We do not have that, to my knowledge, in our tariff, but maybe that's something that we can introduce.
You have in your permit stated obligations for conservation measures.
Well, we do. We have, and we've done everything I think that the state has asked us to do. We can, maybe increase the amount of time that automatic utility sprinklers, underground sprinklers, have to remain in the off position. That's a possibility. And I think we recognize too that there's an awful lot of green lemons in Dover. And remember also, Dover does not have a wastewater system, so to some extent, this water is recycled back into the aquifer.
Mr. Vaughn, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was going to just add a little bit. What I think I'm hearing is the concern about, there is a concern about watered lawns, and it was a grave concern last year. In fact, we urged, as selectmen, we urged people to please consider, became sort of a maxim to say that the brown lawn is the good lawn. In other words, it represents a care around water. But it occurs to me, is it ever considered for a water company to, for instance, you cited 65 gallons per person per day as kind of a goal for Massachusetts. That may be way way under may not be reasonable, but if you were to assess, say, a certain amount of water per household based on the number of occupants, and then attach some sort of a surcharge on excess water used, so that indeed anything watering a lawn is going to cost considerably more than the use around a household. Is that something a water company ever does?
It absolutely does, and we already have that in place, just by virtue of our rate structure. The more water you use, the more expensive it becomes.
What's the multiple? I mean, so I don't know how many gallons per month someone's using once they start watering the lawn, but when you hit that second, when you hit the lawn watering block,
Right.
what's the multiple in terms of the price?
Well, I don't know what it is in terms of the multiple,
Yeah.
but let it suffice for the moment that it's significant. We have some very steep bills that go out to lawn waters, and they're almost indifferent to the cost. In fact, they are.
When we planted a lawn, the bill went from, a winter bill of 70 or 80 bucks a month to over $1,000. So there is
So
a
it's
surcharge.
basically a punitive, yeah.
Right, but, we put in a new lawn, so,
Yeah.
new seeds, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what I will do is I will send the town manager the tariff, the inclined block.
And the Board of Health?
There we have it.
Oh, you have
Okay,
it.
so we have,
This is the last filing.
okay, that still exists.
Yeah.
And essentially, you have, basically, and I'm reluctant to say this, I'm gonna say it anyway, they're subsidizing the folks that are not using water.
Right, and
In
that's,
effect.
and that's a very philosophical, difficult issue to deal with, because even last year, during the drought, we asked citizens of Dover to please try not to water their lawns, because the Commonwealth was in a drought. So as the town, the highest body of authority, I guess, in the town, that's scary. There's really nothing we can do legally for those that aren't getting water from Colonial Water. It's a plea to ask citizens to conserve water. Which is another reason for putting this water study committee in place, is to really understand, as the town grows and there's a few more homes in place, what is it doing to the aquifer? What is it doing to the groundwater table? Should we be trying to do more as a town?
I think that's a great question. I think there's only so much we can do.
No, that was a rhetorical question. I didn't expect you to answer me, so.
But I think if the town has a passion for this, and I know you do, I know the town does have a passion for it, it can take a position and, discourage irrigation. Basically, that's the culprit, irrigation.
Do I understand, though, if my takeaway from this tonight, as a citizen, is that indeed, over, say, the course of the last 10 years, as far as your test wells indicate, the level of the aquifer has not dropped?
Has stabilized.
Let me just qualify that just somewhat. It has been stable, but it has not dropped substantially during the pumping year, during the 12 months cycle of pumping.
I'd like to know, relative to prior years, are we losing ground in the level of the aquifer?
And as nearly as I can tell, we are not. With the records that I have, we are not losing ground,
Because the climate is keeping us restored.
particularly this year.
Right, I understand that. Following a drought,
Right.
we're blessed.
Yes.
But I just meant, you're seeing over years, essentially, the aquifer intact.
Remain stable. It will vary during the year, but it recovers every year.
How far down are you?
We can hit water at 6 feet. Francis Ave, well,
How many monitoring wells do you have?
I believe we have 3, but I will have to check on that.
So I think if I remember last time we talked about how you had this continuous pumping loop to supply water, so you were constantly going to other wells. So your monitoring wells are within that loop? Is that a correct statement?
We're monitoring primarily Francis Ave because that's where the bulk of our water
Okay,
comes from.
all right.
But we integrate the water system sources throughout the day or throughout the week, so that we, just have them working, roughly the same amount
Right.
of time.
See, my simple non-engineer mind converted that into a loop where you were evenly pumping water. But, it worked for
Mr.
me.
Chairwoman, I have one quick question.
Yes, and I'd like,
Technical. You don't report it to the SWAC because it's not required, but I'm just curious, do you know what the pH level is in the supply water?
TH, trihalomethanes?
No, pH.
Oh, pH, beg your pardon. Yes, I do. I believe, well, we correct for pH, so there's a finished water that comes out roughly 7.1, 7.2, maybe a 6.9, but if it's a 6.9, then, the operator knows about it, we know about it. I see the performance and production of the Colonial Water Company every day. That stuff is emailed to me. Our operator here sends it to me. I know what the production is from Chickering, Francis Ave, Draper, Knollwood. So I see that, and I want to make sure that the operator is capable and is on target and watching everything that's happening.
okay, thank you. Tara, you had a question?
Yeah, and you talked about sort of replenishing each year, that based on one presentation I saw from an LSP, but I know a lot about hydrology. That seems like that must be pretty shallow, because what he was saying is it literally takes years for water to seep down to replenish an aquifer. So what's that depth that you're really drawing from? Is that
I believe those and let me just say that's a very good point you're making. Are you familiar with the drawdown curve on wells? Did you say you have a hydraulic?
No. I saw one presentation, I'm like as far away from having a degree in hydrology. as
You're an
possible.
expert.
So-
I can almost say it.
So the well casing goes down, and the depth of the Francis Ave wells is skating, I think they're in the vicinity of 300 feet.
Okay.
Which means that the pump is probably located, and it could be maybe, say, 6 to 10 feet of pump, with various stages on a pump, with screens around it. And as that pump withdraws water out of the aquifer, there's a cone, a drawdown cone that goes like this, down to the pump, and it's reaching out. Our observation well is over here on the drawdown curve, so that it doesn't have to be right at the well. It's measuring what the groundwater is contributing to that well, and the groundwater at that point, the time it places 6 feet deep. Now that can vary, it can get down to 8 feet, but it ranges consistently in that area. Is that?
That answers that question. The other question I had, which is a totally different point, you were talking about the need for this system, or the selectmen were talking about the need, this system may need some heavy replacing and so forth.
The town system, so I think we need to make a distinction.
And so forth. And I guess just one thought as you ponder ways to go would be to get a good handle on your capital structure and cost of capital as compared to Colonial's, because that's a worthwhile comparison to make before we leap just before there's a giant capex.
Thank you.
We should be careful about that because the rate tariff, the rate base that Colonial has is based upon the original contributed capital, granted that Colonial purchased that price from the Fryer family. So it isn't going to be a direct comparison.
I understand. Time for one more question?
No,
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. And Mr. Vaughn, I'll try to get the copy out of you, as we discussed before the tape ran. I was at the last meeting, December 3rd, 2014, and I will try to get from DCTV it take for you also? At the time, the selectmen who were in power at that point asked you what other companies you owned, and you said you had one in Plymouth, Mass, one in Plainville, Connecticut? Is that correct?
Yeah.
And the Abenaki water system in the Lakes region?
Yeah, let me,
If you could-
if I may,
yes.
specify the systems that we have. We have Valley Water Systems in Plainville, Connecticut.
Mhm.
That's roughly 6,800 customers. Colonial Water Company, obviously 610 or so customers. Plymouth Water Company, 850 customers or so. Sheffield Water Company is a system that we acquired out in western Massachusetts.
Oh, Sheffield, Mass, okay, got it.
That's Mountain Water, is
That's
it?
Mountain Water Systems. That's about 500 customers.
Mhm.
And then in Abenaki Water Company, which is in New Hampshire, we have a system in Guilford, one in Bow, which is just south of Concord. And then we have a system up in Bretton Woods, Mount Washington. And so in total, there's about, I'm going to say about 650 or 700 customers in that vicinity.
Okay. And there, so in Massachusetts, the only one that was added in Massachusetts is Sheffield, basically. Okay. And the other question I have is a philosophic one. While you service approximately about 1/3, a little more, a little less than 1/3 of the town, I'm not under system. I have a private well, and I'm concerned about the effect of water withdrawals of Colonial, and also, I should say, of my neighbors using irrigation systems, the effect it has on my well. So I think the whole issue of enforcement, as you've heard, and irrigation systems, in my book, is the big problem, certainly in the suburbs. When I moved to Dover over 40 years, hardly anyone had irrigation systems. And now we brought, from my point of view, a lot of people with quote-unquote urban values into town who think that this is quote-unquote normal to have a green lawn. It's the difference between a links golf course and a very highly manicured green golf course. So those are the problems I have, not only your water system, but the 2/3 of us who are on private wells, and what the pumping that you guys do to supply your customers, even the ones who can pay $1,000 a month. Well, you know what, they may be affecting my water system, and they may have infinite money to pay that $1,000 a month or $2,000 a month. But I'm worried about the effect of your water system on all of us with private wells. So all I can say is I hope the new contract gets into enforcement issues on this whole sprinkler system, because I think that's the real problem, at least as far as Dover is concerned. And I might also add that Jerry and I and a couple of other people are going to a lot of meetings in town and getting a pretty good handle on what other towns are doing. And right now there is some legislation that was proposed last year during the height of the drought to give local towns enforcement over private water systems and finding capabilities, et cetera. It hasn't yet passed, but I think you're absolutely right. DEP is looking at a decline from the 75 gallon per person per day standard, which is what they've been using as a norm for many years, much more downward. So anything you can do to reduce the usage of water.
Right. Thank you very
I'd
much.
like to finish this all up with something that's really not colonial, but it's a general statement.
Well, let's, quickly, if we
It is.
can, because we've
This
been
whole
almost an hour.
concept of water usage is unfortunately misunderstood by so much of the public. Last year, the MWRA never imposed a single restriction, and therefore all of the major cities used as much water as they wanted. You heard people on the radio announcing they didn't see that it was a drought because they could open up their kitchen faucet and not have a problem. And that was because everyone was looking to the 6.5 years reserve between the Wachusett and the Quabbin reservoirs. However, even given all of the precipitation this year, on a July 1st to July 1st measurement basis, the Quabbin reservoir is at the lowest level it's been in 20 years as of this July 1st.
I know, it's daunting. There's not much question that you're seeing a citizens group that has arisen under the auspices of the Board of Health, because Dover is trying to indeed take a look at this, not only in the short run, but more importantly over the long haul. So it's a very big issue for us.
Sure, sure. And we're concerned also. And we want to do everything that we're asked to do, that we're obligated to do. We'll cooperate in whatever manner we can. It is reasonably legal and within the context of the regulators and so forth. So, we're very sympathetic to this.
Right.
But we have similar issues basically in some of the other systems we have. So we know the story.
I know, you live the story.
We live this.
Right. Well, I thank you all because this has been a very important discussion.
Yeah.
We will be considering this contract and signing it, probably would not be tonight. I think we'll bring it up at our next meeting. But we thank you very much because this was an important forum. And it was an opportunity not only for us to hear, but for the rest of the people to hear as well. Mr. Vaughn, thank you. Nick, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Water Study Committee, thank you very much for coming. Thank you.
And for all the work you're doing.
That's right.
Been interesting.
It certainly has.
Mr. Vaughn will hire us soon.
Thank you.
I think she's trying to negotiate a contract.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I'll get that tape. See you later. Thank you.
I believe on the agenda, you said Mr. Clark is not able to be with us tonight?
That's correct.
All right. So we'll defer this next agenda item to the next meeting in August. Thank you. And moving on, we'd like to have, if you wouldn't mind, Mrs. Pugach giving us an update on the position. The Board of Selectmen have had the option of a first refusal to purchase a 61A property on Powasset. Would you like to speak to that, please?
Sure, I can. The town received an intent to sell notice in early June, saying that owners of 61A parcel of land that is identified as Lot 5 or on the assessor's maps, parcel 18-152, consisting of approximately 4 acres of open land without buildings on it, was under contract, was under purchase and sale contract. The town was asked if it would like to exercise its right of first refusal to purchase that agricultural land per the Chapter 61A statute, and also because the same owners had two contiguous parcels that were not classified under Chapter 61A agricultural. The town's also provided with those. They were being sold contemporaneously, and there may have been an option to purchase those. All of the land use boards, the local nonprofit conservation groups and abutters were notified and asked for their comments, and asked for them to be received back in advance of this meeting, so that the board could make a determination whether or not it wishes to exercise its right to purchase any of those parcels. And we received comments from all of those boards, and we actually got, I think, one call from an abutter, and the unanimous opinion of all of those various groups was not to purchase it. The open space parcel is, according to the purchase and sale, is going to be designated for residential purposes. So it sounds like not a 40B or, a large number of houses, just a new house lot. So with that, if the board chooses not to exercise it, it has to execute It's notice of non-exercise. You can do that this evening if you so choose.
Thank you very much for the update. Do we have any questions on the board?
No, I think we had discussed this previously, perhaps? Or maybe it's just the reports I got from some of the other committees, but, you know, again, I think the process that we have in place whereby these come in, the Board of Selectmen's office notifies all the town committees. I know Open Space had an opportunity to walk the property, so the process works really well.
Yes.
And I appreciate the update, so.
Right.
I echo Robin's sentiments. I think the process worked well. I think everybody had adequate time to identify what the opportunities were and to be able to weigh in on it, so I think we're fine.
Excellent. And I understand that the buyer is a couple from Weston, I believe,
Okay.
looking to move to Dover, and they feel very fortunate to have found this beautiful spot, so
Yes.
I sort of
I understand it. It's-
welcome them, right. I would entertain a motion then not to exercise, or?
Yeah.
So then I would make a motion for the Board of Selectmen, based upon the recommendations of all committees, not to exercise our right with respect to Lot 5 on Pawessa Street.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
You know, at our last meeting, because we had so much to sign, we held all the signature pages to the end. I wonder if we should just make that a practice, because I get a lot of complaints about people, you know, the noise of paper, and it just takes up time.
Distracting.
Right, we could just do it.
Do it all again.
Yeah, I'm talking so much, I'm not even writing, signing.
That's great.
So if you want a formal motion on that, I'm more than happy to make it.
Well, I think it's a great opportunity. It was so funny last week because I think we had 40
Yeah, it was,
offenders.
right.
So that was very
We have a
funny.
lot this evening
A
too.
lot of events.
Right,
'Tis the season.
it's great.
Only the Commerce Center burnt in
Next on the agenda is
On to the town.
the declaration that the home lot located at 46 Springdale Avenue is available for sale. Would you like to speak to that, Mrs. Pugach?
Yes.
This has been a wonderful culmination of months and months and months.
Of discussion and input from the citizens and from a working group that put forth at the town meeting Article 18, asking that the town consider an option where the 27 acres, I believe it is, of land that the town carve out 4 acres, is that correct, in the front?
Approximately, right.
Approximately.
Okay, and that section, that area of the town-owned 46 Springdale property would be sold. So you have to actually declare that this land is suitable for a disposition of sale, and with specific restrictions which were part of the discussion between the working group, in particular Charlie Long and
Absolutely.
town council, and were agreed upon. So you would need to just sign the record of vote this evening. You can choose to waive the reading of it if you would like, or you can read the record of vote aloud. It's really up to you, Madam Chair.
How do you all feel? Would you like everyone to hear it?
I feel as though you should be wearing a hat with a roll and be yelling, "Hear ye, hear ye."
A little bell in one hand.
Right, exactly. Walking around.
I don't think it's necessary that we
Okay.
read.
I agree.
Okay,
It's
so-
just a very exciting thing.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
It certainly is, and we're
You missed your
moving forward
opportunity.
on
Hear ye,
this,
hear ye.
as quickly as possible.
So we'll make a motion then indeed,
Yes.
that we will declare that the home lot located at 46 Springdale is in fact available for sale.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I think we should just remind people this will be on the website if they want to look at the language.
Yes.
Right.
Was wonderful.
Are you asking for permission to talk?
I have a quick question. It's my understanding that the time for the closing of the RFP for the selection of an agent is this week?
No,
No?
it's the end of next week.
End of next
28th.
week.
28th. That's correct.
Yeah. So the agent will be selected perhaps early in August?
Our intent is that the evaluators will bring their rankings to the town administrator, who is the chief procurement officer, and he will make a determination to whom that
No.
should be awarded.
No, I'm just trying to
So,
get a
yeah.
sense of when you think
Oh, we want
you'll
to,
have an agent in place.
I think we want to maybe get it all going by August 8th. Yeah.
Sounds good.
It's moving right along now. Excellent. The next on the agenda is to appoint a transfer station operator. Mr. Ramsey, would you like to?
Oh, actually, I'm Mrs.
Pugat?
Pugat.
Sure. Speak to that. So, with the hire of the existing transfer station operator by the Park and Rec Commission for one of their groundskeeper positions, we have a vacancy over at the transfer station. Seems to be that that's the domino effect. They go from transfer station to Park and Rec to highway oftentimes. And so we very quickly posted the position. It's a 24-hour-a-week position, Wednesdays, Saturdays, Sundays. You all know that better than I. We received 5 applications, interviewed 2 qualified appearing candidates, and unanimously selected Bill Martin of Dover as eminently qualified. He's been with the fire department for 2 years, and we think that he would make an excellent hire into that position.
It's wonderful. I love the way Dover does this, of people moving around in different capacities, working in different
Yes.
capacities. It's great.
Oh, and they're very supportive
Right,
of each other.
exactly.
They work together and they share their staff, and you know, we're really interested in developing those employees if they so desire, that to get a permanent full-time career working for the town of Dover, and we have a very happy group right now.
It's wonderful.
Yes.
It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Many hats. Many people wear many hats.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Excellent. Do I hear a motion?
John, would you like
I
to do
move
the
that we
honors?
accept the recommendation and we approve the hiring of Mr. William Martin.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent.
I was just making sure you were awake.
I'm doing all maybe I care. You're over there, the overachiever, formulating your questions.
And we have a number of wonderful appointments. We divided up differently this year. We handed out the assignments by pages instead of the traditional way of divvying out the individual committees and boards. And so we went home and all of us wrote to the people, and I have a number of responses and answers. And I believe you have a sense of all positives, but you're still waiting for answers
Confirmation,
back.
right.
And
That's a
John,
good way of saying that.
you
I
heard
was the
back from
underachiever.
people that you hadn't even written to.
Exactly. I heard back from everybody.
How did
Even
you,
today.
how did you do that?
It was amazing.
It was
My
Immediate
problem
response.
was I started on around July 4th.
Well, I'm so grateful to Mrs. DeShillo for having created a list for me, because I kept sending in my answers that I had, but I'd like to go ahead now and work off this list and reappoint, or have us all move to
Okay, that
reappoint,
sounds great.
please. I'm so pleased on Historical Commission, Tom Johnson and Richard Eels will be signing up again each for a 3-year term. I would like to move that we appoint Tom Johnson and Richard Eels to the Historical Commission each for another 3-year term. And having worked with both these gentlemen, I'm delighted that they are both signing up again.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, excellent. And the Council on Aging, Geraldine Wise has re-upped for another 1-year term as an associate member, Ruth Townsend a 1-year term as an associate member, and Maureen Dilge another 3-year term, and Joanne Connolly another 3-year term. So everyone who was asked on Council of Aging has said yes again, and again, thanks to all 4 of them. I've had the pleasure of working with all 4 of them as well. So I'd like to move that we reappoint Geraldine Wise, Ruth Townsend, Maureen Dilge, and Joanne Connolly all to the COA for their respective terms.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, good. And this was, Mr. Ramsey, would you, you had, I believe, through the Board of Registrars, this is actually yours. I shouldn't take yours. You had contacted at the bottom.
We have contacted Camille Johnston and John Walsh, and they have both accepted a reappointment if the board so chooses.
Excellent. And I would like to move that we accept both of them, reappoint both of them to the Board of Registrars.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So I'm psyched, and there's a lot of moving around. In fact, I noticed that there is an associate position in Conservation Commission. I've had some inquiries myself about people who are interested in that. So we're hearing more and more people who are coming forward and saying they'd love to be of service and like to participate and are interested in different aspects of it. And thanks to Tara, you're moving around. You're not only staying involved, but joining in a couple, but you're moving, exactly. So, I mean, it's fabulous. So thank you very much. Delighted. Anyone else? Did you want to speak to any appointments, or?
No, I think we are in the process of doing something similar, correct? Do we have?
I've got some appointments, Madam
Oh,
Chair.
good,
Yeah.
wonderful,
I
excellent.
want to steal Dave's thunder.
Starting on page 4 with the Chief of Communications, Chief McGowan, we'd be happy to accept another year.
Wonderful, I'd like to move that we reappoint Chief McGowan.
Seconded.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And on page 8, Madam Chair, both George Junta and Mike Angieri have indicated a willingness to accept reappointment to the groundwater bylaw enforcement agent positions.
Wonderful. I move that we accept both George Ginta and Mike Dangieri for the groundwater control, and I'm so pleased to reappoint them. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good.
Mr. Hughes, Craig Hughes, has agreed to accept another, to re-up as the hazardous waste coordinator for a 3-year term.
I move that we accept and appoint Mr. Hughes as the hazard waste manager. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Walter Avalone has agreed to re-up as the building inspector. Felix Zemmel has agreed to re-up as the backup building inspector. Kevin Malloy in the position of inspector of wiring, and the deputy inspector of wiring, James Naughton, have all agreed to be re-upped.
It's wonderful. All 4 men in the building department. I move that we reappoint all 4 for the building department.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And wait, there's more.
There's more.
And Mr. Hughes, Mr. Craig Hughes has agreed also to re-up as the town's Metro West RTA representative for another 1-year term.
I move that we appoint Mr. Craig Hughes for the MRTA. MWRTA, right.
Want to know what that is? Mrs. Hunter can explain it to you.
What is that?
I have no idea.
It's a regional transportation.
Right.
Metro West Regional Transit Authority, it
Excellent.
provides the
Mr. Clark can tell you.
transportation that basically is used by the elderly.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, excellent, which is why he was the contact then for COA around the van.
Right.
Excellent,
Yeah, and they were actually in town today doing pickups.
perfect. Oh, that's
Are you
great.
the backup driver?
Jerry's in charge of that also.
It's under the Board of Health now.
I gave up my CDL so many decades ago.
That's great.
It's now under the Board of Health.
And thank you for explaining it, because of course I know the capacity, I just didn't know the title, so that's wonderful. Excellent.
Thank you.
Mr. Craig Hughes has also indicated a willingness to re-up as the Right to Know coordinator for the town of Dover.
I move that we reappoint Mr. Craig Hughes for the Right to Know Coordinator for the town of Dover.
Seconded.
All in favor? Aye.
What is the Right to Know coordinator?
Jerry?
Jerry was the right to know coordinator. I don't even know that thing.
You don't have
If
right to know.
David doesn't want to answer, I will.
What is it?
Under both federal and state provisions, an employee should be provided certain information as to safety issues, as well as, I believe the state also requires information regarding discrimination. Is that correct?
The former.
But it's safety predominantly, and that's mostly at the federal level.
Thank you.
Working with hazardous substances, for example.
It sounded a lot more interesting.
Right,
The
right.
Right to Know.
Thank
Well,
you.
in some communities, it's
It's a,
problem.
oh,
No,
sure,
no, I
of
know.
course. Right.
And then Mr. Hughes has also indicated a willingness to re-up as our superintendent of streets.
And that's a
That's a
beautiful
very
thing.
good thing.
That is a very good
I move that we reappoint Mr. Craig Hughes as our Superintendent of Streets.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That means he can keep his email address of streets@doverma.org.
Right. Sounds like a rock band,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
exactly.
And then last, Madam Chair,
Yes.
Jerry Lane has agreed to re-up as our treasurer collector for a period of
Excellent.
1 year.
I move that we reappoint Jerry Lane as our treasurer collector for the town of Dover.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Mr. Jeffries?
I think we have covered, I think, Dave, did we cover all the ones that we were?
There are a couple left, but I haven't
But you're
yet
still
reached them.
waiting to
I'm
hear.
still working on them.
Okay, excellent.
We, is this the royal we?
No. This was, I was waiting for people to respond, and Dave said, I think I've spoken to them, but
Excellent.
thank you.
Thank you very much. And moving on, talk to us about the 7th annual Pulled
This
Pork
is the
Tea
most-
Time Trial Cycling Event.
Other than Jerry's 107 bullet points, this could be the most riveting thing the town of Dover sees once again this year. So the 7th annual Pulled Pork Time Trial is a cycling event that's a very spirited race for bragging rights. There's no compensation or money involved in any way, shape, or form. So teams of 6 riders of all shapes and sizes. We'll have 3 or 4 female teams riding this year. Last year we had 2. In the prior years we only had 1. So we're growing exponentially. So the event happens on Dover Days. It happens at 6 a.m.
Take your word for that, Mr.
We
Jeffries.
are, because we get up and we ride before the traffic. Normally we ride at 5:30 or 5:45. So
It's a late
this is a
start.
late start. This is a late start.
Rolling out the door.
We moved the event last year from the beginning of Springdale down to Channing at the request of Officer Harry because it was an easier place to stage it. So we begin
That makes sense.
at Channing. So we ride from Channing and we do essentially a loop around the outside of Dover, and it's a timed event. The team of 6 riders goes off, and then 4 minutes later the next team, and so forth and so on. So it's a great event, and we've got a charitable portion of it this year we're going to ask for a little bit of a donation to do a couple of things that the town has been doing in the past. So with lots of input from Officer Harry and from Chief McGowan, we made a few minor changes, and we just wanted to be respectful and mindful of the people who are setting up for the Dover Days. So there are police, the wooden horses that the police use to close off the side street in front of the Legion and in front of the library. So we're going to be mindful of their setup and have a couple of more people just from a safety standpoint. So
Excellent.
we're trying to cover all the bases. We have people manned at all the corners and turns, so.
So
it's a great
basically,
event.
there's no pulled pork anywhere.
There is, the pulled pork. Pulled pork happens later in the evening.
I was expecting a pulled pork breakfast.
No, it's a pulled pork dinner, but there's lots of,
Excellent.
yeah, really fun things, so.
And we'll be getting the license at the next meeting for that.
So this is just the request, which has been approved by Chief McGowan, and we're presenting it to the board tonight for your approval.
Would you like to move on it?
I would like to move that we accept the 7th annual pulled pork team time trial race in the town of Dover on Dover Days.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, would you like me to read the events for
Oh,
the
you
liquor
did a
licenses?
sterling job last week,
I think we
last
went
time.
through
I think it was
faster than-
fabulous.
Anyone ever possibly imagined. So on July 19th, we
Yesterday.
have... Yesterday. Yes, yesterday. We had the Elm Bank, a location in Elm Bank. We have a wedding on July 29th, a wedding on July 29th at both Elm Bank and the Connors Center. On the 29th, Shakespeare on the Farm at Powesett. On the 30th, Shakespeare on the Farm at Powesett. August 1st, dinner meeting at the Connors Center at Boston College. August 7th, alumni retreat at the Connors Center. A wedding on August 12th, a wedding on the 13th, a dinner meeting at the Connors Center on August 16th, dinner on the 17th, a dinner meeting on the 18th, a wedding on the 20th, an August 21st dinner, and September 2nd wedding, all at the Boston College Connors Center.
Right. Unbelievable schedule for them.
It is.
Just goes straight down the Connors Center.
It's such a tremendous asset to
It
the town
certainly
of
is.
Dover.
And again, our thanks to Chief McGowan for having looked at all of these and approved all of these, and I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve all of the events at the Connors Center, Elm Bank, and Powesett Farm.
Do I hear a second?
Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you very much.
And to execute after?
We'll sign afterwards. I think that would be great. Thank you. Thank you.
Jerry, I just want you to know for the record that the Board of Selectmen do not get invited to these events. I would assume that the Board of Health might get invited because you might have some say over these permits.
No, actually, what happens is they submit the request, we, if necessary, send a contracted agent to do a food inspection in advance and ensure that they have people who have qualified under the safe serve requirements. So we do that. But I have to say to you, we haven't gotten an invite.
I've never, how many years? 4
So
years?
this-
4 years I've been approving these, not one invitation, not one. And not one is in my honor
You should say
either.
no once.
How beneficial it would be to the town if the Connors Center were a taxable entity.
One of the things that did occur, as quickly as we are all willing to sign after the meeting, it's a very good idea that maybe we want to consider for August moving as a group to handle signatures after the meeting.
I would,
I
I
think
think
it's
it makes a lot of
kindness
sense.
to everyone and
It
to
worked so
our
well,
public,
right?
right. So I don't want to act on it tonight, but let's consider that and perhaps take action on that next month.
I think it's a
Great
good
idea.
idea.
Thank
And
you
then
very
that
much.
way I won't go home with the pieces of paper in my bag and Mona has to call.
Madam Chair, can I just ask one other question while we
Yes.
have our Water Study Committee here? And that is, with regards to enforcement, and a lot of the things that we discussed this evening are going to come back to enforcement. And I think that I would encourage the Water Study to really dig into both what the board, the town, the colonial, and the guidelines, if you will, of what our capability would be, and specifically.
Well, I can answer that to you already. I submitted about 7 or 10 months ago, I don't believe, you may have been on the board at that point, a statement on the legal authorities. So just to redo that, the Board of Selectmen does have, as water commissioners, the authority to restrict the use of water amongst those users who are users of the Dover Water Department. Okay?
Not wells.
Not much.
Not well.
Okay.
Not much.
Not a lot.
Any customer of a regulated public water supply company, that's a term of art. And just to be clear, the public water supply companies in the town start with Colonial, then go to Springdale Farms Water Supply Trust, then to Meadowbrook, and to,
Old Farm?
a section in Glen, then to Old Farm. All of these are regulated public utilities. Only the DPU and the DEP, in different respects, regulates them. And there is neither legislation nor regulation at the state level that authorizes the town in any respect to address that problem.
Mhm.
And furthermore, with regard to private wells, there is nothing at all. Now, as Justine mentioned, a representative from the South Shore, from New Bedford, has introduced a bill. It hasn't gone anywhere yet, but I was just talking to Denise Garlick about it today, to hope that she would work with others, and I'll talk to Mike Rush also, has introduced a bill that, and it's a limited scope, that would give authorities, and it's unclear to whom within the town. She said the Board of Health, because it turns out that's about as close as you can get. Authority in times of drought. Now, it's nothing more than a bill, hasn't been read, hasn't even gone for the first reading. That's it.
And there was one introduced last year. Last year's drought caused panic, as you can see, all over the state. And I believe Jerry's given you the Google Docs.
Right.
The Mass Rivers Alliance put together a fantastic 30-page document that I would urge you to open, showing all the towns and what authorities they have and what they don't. And that basically, they don't have much authority, okay?
Yeah.
But that's changing because these drought conditions, as we've been learning, it doesn't go away
Right.
in 1 year. Okay?
Right.
And we don't know if we're in a decades-long thing or a century-long thing. So everyone in the state, Jerry and I went to Boston the other day and attended the Drought Management Task Force meeting, which I was very impressed, actually, Jerry, with the thought that the state officials are giving to this whole issue, okay? And yes, we are, you'll have all sorts of summaries.
What's interesting is we were the only town
Yeah, that's true.
represented among,
No, there was one from
Oh,
Cohasset.
Cohasset.
Cohasset
Yes, I'm
has a
sorry,
huge water problem.
Yes.
Ipswich has a huge water problem.
But do they also have a lot of private wells?
Yeah, no, exactly. And what you learn going to these statewide meetings is the drought management plan. That again, I urge you to look at it on the Google Docs that Jerry did provide. Basically does not take into effect the 10% of us in Massachusetts that have private wells, the 600,000 people. So Jerry and I made a very impassioned statement at that meeting last Thursday that they've got to get their act together about those of us that are on private wells.
One of the very first things that we did when we moved to Dover is we disconnected our sprinkler system that was built, came with the house. The house was
Right.
built and it came with a sprinkler system, which was, it took hours to go through the whole property, and it was just a massive waste of water. So,
going
but there
back,
should be some type of incentive to do that. There should be some also something that, from a neighborhood standpoint, if an entire neighborhood did that, it would
Goes brown.
This would be a brown.
First of all, I have openly joked with a number of people that historically I would always pull my hoses out on Memorial Day and pull them back in on Columbus Day. And then there was the year when I went to pull the hoses back on Columbus Day and realized I'd never taken them out
Right.
because Dover is saturated. And in many cases, people are watering when there's no need.
That's exactly
What's
right.
really objectionable and is, to use a pejorative, stupid, is for people to be watering during days of peak sunlight. All they're doing is evaporating water.
That's right.
But anyway, that's exactly the sort of thing.
My biggest issue is watching the sprinklers when it's raining
I know.
out.
Yeah.
Tara, did you have your hand up? Okay, all right. I think in the interest of time, I'd like to just look quickly at the minutes. Are we ready?
Yep.
The
Actually,
minutes
we
from-
had the opportunity to review them
Yes,
before.
right, exactly, and I wouldn't have any changes to make. It was an excellent meeting with the presentation on so many different levels. Do I have a motion?
We have a motion to accept the minutes of the June 29th meeting as
your
presented.
very first meeting as chair.
Second, you were not here the first one.
It was just us girls.
No, could I say, my first meeting with you sitting here.
Right.
That was, you're right. It was wonderful. Thank you.
Seconded.
All in favor?
Bye.
Aye.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there a citizen's
I
comment?
have one.
Yes.
The second newsletter
I saw that.
from the Board of Health went out at approximately 2 o'clock this afternoon. Before I got a panic call to go fix the network. And as of about now, 30% of the subscribers have opened the email. Moreover, our subscription list grew from an original 70 or so people. We're now up to 338.
Excellent.
So there's been a considerable growth of interest.
Excellent.
And I would mention that since people have commented about the man in the hole, the well, that Cohasset, you opened the mail 4 times. You didn't read that?
I did read it. I absolutely read it. Why?
Big brother is watching you,
What
John.
kind of stalker?
I was the first person to
No, you were the
credit
7th person to open it.
for the
Now, sitting there
700.
watching, we're all unsubscribed.
Yeah, he's watching you.
I opened it and did not read it.
But just as
saw
a,
it.
Read all
As a point-
82 bullet points
as
as
a
well.
point of that,
Twice.
that I put that in because when that happened in Cohasset the other night, it was one day after we got indication of someone saying, I'd like to just take the shed off of my well. Is there anyone who can help me take the shed off of my unused well? And I immediately sent the board agent out to explain to him that you don't do it that way
That's right.
because it is unsafe.
That's right.
And we have those situations here.
That's right.
Just one query, and Dave, I was gonna send you this email, but who do I contact about the dead trees in Dover? This isn't, the drought, you can drive around and you see dead trees quite frequently, and I have a whole list that I've been keeping as I've driven around town. I'd like to know, who do I give this list to, and how can we get the trees taken down? It's obvious the effects of the drought last year have killed a lot of the trees. So there's one right out here in the little triangle that you're probably seeing. There's another one, you've got a fir tree, a spruce tree, right on the town common.
Right, we actually, I was just doing it.
That is actually
Is that-
approved for
Yes.
removal.
So,
We approved it. Warrant committee approved
oh, so what I just mentioned is gonna be taken care of.
Right.
The tree out back? Yeah.
And then the one out here.
But
But to whom do I
Tree
send?
warden?
Park and Rec.
Park and Rec is the
They
one
are
that I should
in
be
charge of the
sending.
trees on this property.
On this property, yes, but if you
And
want
what
to,
about
you can
else?
send, if you want to do it easily, you can just send it to me.
And you'll get it to the right agency, thank you.
Thank you very much. That was what I was gesturing to Kate. We were doing this about the tree back then, right?
I thought you were praying for the meeting to be done.
We're paying for insurance. Namaste.
Well, it's been a wonderful meeting, and I thank the Water Committee. I thank you all for coming. I think it was very helpful. I hope it was for the watchers. It was a wonderful conversation to have with Mr. Vaughn and Nick, and to hear their answers and to hear our concerns and to voice that. And it's always wonderful, Mrs. Canny, to have you here as well, and Maureen, to have you back. It's great to have you. So thank you all. It's been a little longer than normal, but I think it was an important discussion. Do I have a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Uh-huh.
I do have a question. What do you want to do with that contract term?
You want our input about conditions or things, or do you
I
think?
mean, I would like to see put in the contract the extension of the obligation for the reports. Right now, only the one report is mentioned. And he says that he's willing to do it, but I'd like to see it in the
Yeah.
contract.
Maybe we should get them some thoughts.
Well,
So
no,
we
those
don't have
thoughts
to-
are, they're in the paper I gave you.
Well, we are having a meeting tomorrow morning, maybe we could.
I think
shoot
that
you
would be
a few
fine. And I would
Summary.
suggest if you have
Summaries
2 or
of it.
3 changes you are interested in, are considering, that you send them to Mr. Ramsey.
Okay.
I mean, basically, the question of the term, the recording,
Conservation.
and
We'll write them down tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's fine.
All right.
But
Thank you.
let's let Mr. Ramsey be the hub.
no, that's fine.
That's great. So I would take a second on the adjournment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thank you all very
Thank
much.
you.